In this video, I'm going to show you how you can build multi-step forms in Webflow. And here I have such a multi-step form. This is a gym onboarding form, and I can click on sign up. I can type in my name. If I don't fill out all of the required fields, you can see there's even some custom designed and styled validation message. So I have to fill out everything. And here, if I get to the third step, there's even some conditional logic involved here. So for example, if I click on endurance, you can see I get redirected to the step, what is your favorite endurance exercise? But if I were to click on strength, I get redirected to a completely different step called in what way do you want to improve your strength? So depending on the selection or the input that the website visitor makes, they get redirected to a different step inside of the form. So this is the conditional logic and branching. And we're also going to learn how to set this up today. And to build all of this, we are going to use a tool called Inputflow. So Inputflow is a Webflow app that you can install inside your Webflow account. And the way this works is basically you build all of your form elements, all of your form steps inside of the Webflow Designer. So you have full design control over it. And afterwards, you use Inputflow to add the multi-step functionality, to add the calculations, to add the logic, the validation, and everything that is required for an advanced multi-step form. And before we get right into it, I want to make a little disclaimer. I am the founder, I'm the creator of Inputflow. So if I today say that Inputflow is a great software, that it's a great tool, then I'm obviously going to be a little bit biased here. So my recommendation to you is try it out yourself, see if Inputflow is the right fit for your project. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to me at any point in time. Let's go to the Webflow Designer. I have already prepared all of the form elements and all of the form steps so that we can save a little bit of time. I'm quickly going to show you the structure of it. So right here, I have this section called section onboarding. There's this image right here. And here I have the onboarding form. This is just a normal Webflow form, nothing special about it. This is the form block. This is the form element. And now inside of this form element, we have all of the different steps nested as div blocks. So these are just div blocks with the class onboarding step applied to it because this is an onboarding form. And inside of these div blocks, you have your form elements. So you have your headings, your input fields, your buttons, and everything that is needed for the form itself. So let's recap. Normal Webflow form with all of the form elements inside of div blocks. And these div blocks will later represent the multiple form steps. And right now they are all stacked below each other. This is the basic starting point. And just in case you haven't done it, make sure, before we start to go into Inputflow, make sure that all of your input fields, like your text input fields, your radio buttons and everything, if you click on the settings icon right here, that they have a proper and descriptive field name. So where it says text field settings, that the name is descriptive. So in this case, it's called last name. This is a good name because later, if we start to work with it, if we start to set up the conditions based on the input fields, we have to know what the fields are. And if you give the fields a generic name, like for example, field 10 or field 15, you're not going to know the purpose of the field. So make sure all of your input fields, all of your checkboxes, all the radio buttons, all the select elements have a proper and descriptive name. Really important. Okay, now what we have to do next is we have to actually install the Inputflow app. And to do that, you can just go to the website inputflow.io and click on Install Webflow app. And once you click that, you get redirected to the Webflow app marketplace. And here you can click on the Install button. And then you have to select where you want to install Inputflow, on which website, on which Webflow project, or if you want to use it on multiple projects, you can just use your entire workspace. And once you've done that and have clicked the button again, you have now completed the installation. You can go back to your Webflow Designer, reload the Webflow Designer, and then inside of the left sidebar, there is this apps icon. You click it, and then there is a list of all of the apps that you have currently installed. I have 3 right now, and the second one is Inputflow, so I click the launch button and start the app. If you have never opened up Inputflow before, you will see this screen right here, the authentication screen. And if you don't have an account yet, you have to create an account first. To create an account, you can click on sign up here, where it says don't have an account yet, sign up here, and then you switch to the sign up screen. And then you just type in your email address and choose a good password that you can remember. This will take about, 20 seconds, and then you're done. And afterwards you click on create account, wait a few seconds, and then you will be redirected to the actual Inputflow app. And this is how the Inputflow app looks like at first when you open it up after you logged in or signed up for an account. Before we start to work with this Inputflow app, we have to do one more little preparation. And that is we have to add the Inputflow script to the page. Because no matter how beautifully you create and design and build your form, without the Inputflow script, it will not work. And to get to the Inputflow script, you just go to the website docs.inputflow.io. This is the documentation website. You will find a lot of different documentation articles for all of the different Inputflow features and functionalities, much more in depth than I will cover it today in this video, so definitely worth checking out docs.inputflow.io. But now in this case, we're just going to go to the second menu point called adding the script. And here, where it says copy the following code, we copy this script element. And this is the only time with Inputflow you will ever have to interact with code. Everything else is completely no code. And in fact, right here, this is not really interacting with code. We just have to copy and paste it. That's all there is to it. So I click this copy icon, go back to Inputflow, and then on all the pages where I want to build a multi-step form, I add this script tag. So in this case, this form is located on the home page. So I click on the page settings of the home page and then scroll down, go to the first custom code block where it says inside of the head tag. Then I paste this and click on save, and then I am done. Now we've successfully added the script to the Webflow site. The first thing that we're going to do with Inputflow is we are going to use the Elements Manager to connect all of the relevant form elements to Inputflow so that Inputflow knows how to deal with them and can manage them. The Elements Manager is this view right here. You can also get to the Elements Manager at any point in time by clicking on this Elements menu button. So I click on Elements and then this one opens up. You can think of the Elements Manager like a setup assistant. The first element that we're going to connect to Inputflow is the form itself. So I open the navigator right here, click on the form, and then it says connect this form with Inputflow, and I click the button connect. And now it says success, form is now connected to Inputflow. Perfect. Now Inputflow knows that we want this to be a multi-step form. Next, I'm going to connect the individual form steps. So I'm going to start with the first step right here. I click on it, and then you can see it says turn selected element into, and then I have a couple of options. In this case, I want to turn it into a step, so I click the step button. I enter a name. I'm going to call this first step welcome step. You can call your steps whatever you want. You don't have to remember the names, but you have to recognize them. So you have to make sure that all of your names are descriptive, because later we're going to need these names to connect the different form steps and add the multi-step functionality. So make sure when you enter a name that you know which step this name is referring to. So I enter the step name and click on create step. And now it says successfully created new step called welcome step. Let's do that for the second step as well. I select the second step, the second div block here, basically. Turn selected element into step. I click the step button again. And this one I call what's your name, because this is the step where I ask the user, what is your name? And then I create this step. Successfully created new step called what's your name. Perfect. Let's keep going. So this is the third step, and this is the main fitness goal step. So I click on turn selected element into step, and name of the step is main fitness goal. And I create the step. Okay, and for all of the other steps, I've already done that as a preparation for this video. As you can see, when I click on this, it already says selected element is a step, and here the name of the step. And also for the other steps, this is the favorite endurance exercise step. This is the what exactly do you want to work on, the physique focus step, the body fat step, and so on and so forth. You get the idea. What I want to do next is I want to connect all of the next and back buttons. If we go to the complete version of this form, you can see that we have these buttons right here. When I click on sign up, I go to the next step. When I click on next step, I go to the next step. And if I click this button up here, I go back to the previous step. So these are our next and back buttons. And we also have to tell Inputflow which buttons are our next and back buttons. And to do that, I'm just going to click on this button. And then it says turn selected element into, and this time I'm going to click on next button. Turn element into a next button. Perfect. Let's also do this for this button. I click on the button, turn it into a next button. I click on this button, turn it into a next button as well. And I think for all of the other next buttons, I've already done it. Yes, as you can see, if I click on this, it says selected element is a next button. Up here, I have one single back button for the entire form, which is always visible. So I select this back button and turn selected element into a back button. And now we've connected all of the buttons. This is all the preparation that we have to do for now, and we can now build the multi-step functionality. But before we can do that, whenever you make changes to the form structure, or you make changes with the Elements Manager, what you have to do is you have to publish your Webflow project. You have to publish it to your staging domain. So the one with the .webflow.io. You don't have to publish it to your production domain, only the staging domain. So I select the staging domain and publish to the selected domain. Now you may ask yourself, okay, that's all really interesting, but what happens in the background when you connect these elements to Inputflow? And that is a very good question, and I'm going to show this to you now. For example, if I click on this form step right here, and up here in the settings panel, if I click on it, you can see Inputflow added two custom attributes. It added an if-id attribute and an if-step attribute. And it also does for all of the other elements. It always adds some type of attribute. For example, this next button gets the attribute if element equals button dash next. You don't have to worry about these attributes. You don't have to manage them yourself. Inputflow manages them for you. Just don't touch them, keep them as they are, and don't delete them, don't modify them, and then everything will work as expected. And another question that you may ask yourself is, wait a minute, we connected a few different elements, but we did not connect the input fields, the input elements. So for example, this text input or this radio input right here, we did not connect this to Inputflow. And that is true. But what we did is, if I go up 2 levels, you can see we connected the form itself to Inputflow. It says selected form is managed by Inputflow. And this form also received an ID, which you, by the way, should not touch as well. Just keep it as it is. And because we connected the form to Inputflow, all of the form input fields, all of the form input elements are automatically connected and managed by Inputflow itself. So whenever we make a change to an input field, or whenever we add a new one, or whenever we remove an input field, Inputflow tracks these changes and automatically manages or removes these IDs right here. That happens in the background and you don't have to worry about it. Let's quickly recap. We have now connected all of the relevant elements with the Elements Manager, which is kind of a setup assistant. And we have published, after we did this preparation, we have published the Webflow project to the .webflow.io staging domain. And now that we've done that, we can get to the really fun part, which is the form editor. So I click on this menu button called Form Editor. And now here in the form editor, I can click on this Load Elements button at the top right with this load icon. And as soon as I click this, you can see it says successfully synced new form elements, inputs and steps. And all of the steps that we just created are now visible in the sidebar, and we can start to work with them. When I say we can now work with these steps, what I mean is we can drag these steps onto the canvas. So I can take this welcome step and drag it onto the canvas, move it around, and connect it with other steps. So for example, if I drag the second step onto the canvas, the what's your name step, and the main fitness goal step, the third step, I can connect the steps with each other. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit. You can zoom in by scrolling with your mouse wheel or with your touchpad. And then I can click on this small black square at the bottom of the step and hold my left mouse key and draw a connection. And I draw the connection to the center of the next step. Then I release my mouse key, and now you can see there's this small arrow, which means the connection was successfully created. And I'm going to do the same thing for the what's your name step. I click on it, draw a connection to the main fitness goal step, and now there's a connection as well. You can always move the steps around by clicking and dragging them on the canvas. This is the start of our form. These are our first 3 steps. Okay, so why don't we look at the current state of the page to see what has already happened now. So this is how it looked like a few moments ago. Remember all of the individual steps stacked below each other, no multi-step functionality whatsoever. And now that we've done our preparation with Inputflow, added the script, and started to work with the form editor, if I now reload this page, you can see suddenly all of the steps except for the first one disappear. And then when I click the next button, we can see we already can go to the next step. And if I click it again, we already go to the third step because the first 3 steps are all connected. But if I were to click on next again here, nothing happens because there's no step after it. So let's keep going. And this main fitness goal step is the really interesting step of the form because, as you might remember from the start, depending on the selection that the website visitor makes here, we want to send them to a different step. So if they select endurance, we want to send them to the step, what is your favorite endurance exercise? If they select strength, we want to ask them, what are their strength goals? And if they select physique, we want to ask them if they want to build muscle or if they want to lose weight. So 3 different potential next steps depending on the selection that the website visitor makes here. And to build that in Inputflow, we just have to drag all of the potential next 3 steps onto the canvas. I'm going to take the what are your strength goals steps. I'm going to take the favorite endurance exercise step and the physique focus step and drag them all onto the canvas. And now I'm going to draw a connection to all of these 3 next steps. So I'm going to draw a connection from the main fitness goal to favorite endurance exercise. I draw a connection to main fitness goal to what are your strength goals and to physique focus. As you could see, as soon as I created the second outgoing connection, so as soon as I connected the second potential next step, these yellow conditional blocks showed up. Because now we somehow have to tell Inputflow when we want to send the user to which next step. Because we have 3 of them and Inputflow does not know when to send the user to which next step. So we have to tell it to Inputflow. And that is also why these conditional blocks at the beginning, when they are not configured, are yellow, because they are mandatory. Yellow means they are important. You have to fill them out. Let's start with the first one. Let's create the condition that decides when we want to send the user from main fitness goal to the favorite endurance exercise step. So I click on the conditional block, create the condition, and this is the condition. And we have to select an element. So if element, in this case, I'm going to choose the radio group fitness goal, which consists of the radio button physique, strength, and endurance. If fitness goal is endurance, then we want to send the user to this favorite endurance exercise step. And just as a little side note, if we go to the radio group fitness goal, so this is the radio group right here, called fitness goal, you can see here's the group name fitness goal. And all of these 3 radio buttons have this group name fitness goal. And that is why inside of this conditional block, I can select this radio group name. I close this again and I set up the condition for the second step, the second potential step. I click on this condition, main fitness goal to what are your strength goals. We want to do that, create condition if the radio group fitness goal is strength. So if the user selected strength. And for the last one, we can also do that. So main fitness goal to physique focus, create a condition if fitness goal is physique. Perfect. And now if we go to the live site again and reload, you can see now if I make a selection here, if I select endurance, we get redirected to the endurance exercise step, just like we configured it. If I go back and select strength, we go to a different step called in what way do you want to improve your strength? And if I select the physique radio button, we go to the step what exactly do you want to work on? So the physique focus step. It is important to know that the conditions that we just set up are super basic and super simple conditions. So as you can see, there's only one subcondition. But what you can do with Inputflow, you can create really advanced logical conditions. So for example, I have, as you can see, a lot of different options right here for the function. So I can say if something is, or if it's not, or if it contains a certain set of characters, if it is empty, if it is not empty, lots of different options. And there are even more options if you select an input field with another type, for example, a number input, then you will have functions related to numbers like greater than, smaller than. And this way you can build really complex and interesting logical branching conditions. And you can also chain conditions. So at any point in time, you can click on the settings icon right here, and then you get 3 buttons. The AND button, the OR button, and the delete button. The delete button is obvious. When you click on it, the condition will disappear. If I click the AND button, I get a second subcondition. And once I've configured this, the entire condition will only be true, so we only will send the user from the main fitness goal to the physique focus step if both of the subconditions are true. So if this one is true and this one is true. And you could also, if I click the settings icon again, add an OR condition. If I click on OR, then this is a logical OR rule. So in this case, these two must be true or this one must be true in order for us to send the user from the main fitness goal to the physique focus step. My recommendation to you is keep these conditions as simple as possible, but sometimes when you need a more advanced logical rule, you can use these logical AND or chainings. And if you're not certain or if you're not 100% sure how they work, then you can either take a deeper look at the documentation. The docs.inputflow.io has a few interesting articles on that, where it says branching and conditions, or you can just contact me or contact the Inputflow support, and then we will help you figure it out as well. I'm going to delete these 2 conditions again. So I click the settings icon, delete them, because for this, in this case, we only need a very simple condition. Okay, let's keep going. After the physique focus step, after these 3 steps, I want to send the user to the personal training session step. So I want to ask the user, do you want to have a personal training session? And connect the favorite endurance exercise to the personal training session, the strength goal step to the personal training session, and the physique focus step to the personal training session. However, the physique focus step has one special case. Because if we go to the final version of the form, the already completed version that I built, I'm quickly going to fill this out, and select physique. Now here there's another logical branching. So if a user selects lose weight, they get to the step, what is your current body fat percentage? And only then will they get to the step where they get asked if they want to have a personal training session. If the user selects they want to build muscle, they immediately go to the personal training session question. Okay, let's set that up. I'm going to drag the body fat percentage step onto the canvas, create another connection, put this here. Let's also move the conditional block over here so that it's a little more obvious. And put this here. And then after the body fat percentage step, I also want to ask the user for a personal training session. I have to set up a condition again. I want to send the user from physique focus to body fat if create condition physique focus is lose weight. And the second condition, now what I could do is create condition if physique focus is build muscle, but there's an even easier way. I can use a helper function if I click on choose function here called any other case, which is kind of a catch-all rule. And the way this works now is if the physique focus is lose weight, then we want to send the user to body fat. And in any other case, no matter what selection they made, we want to send them directly to the personal training session. So this is a nice little helper condition that will come in handy a lot of times. Okay, and now our form is almost complete. We just have to add the contact method. And then depending on what the user chooses in the contact method, as you can see down here, they have two options, email or WhatsApp. So I drag the two steps onto the canvas, I connect them, and also set up the conditions. Contact method to WhatsApp number if contact method is WhatsApp, and create condition if contact method is email, we want to send them to the email address question. And now we can zoom out a little bit and we see our entire multi-step form diagram. I think this looks really cool, and not only does it look cool, it is now complete. We have now completed the entire multi-step functionality. And if we go to the live website, reload the page, we can now click through the entire form. You can see I can make a selection. I can select physique. If I select lose weight, I have to enter my body fat percentage. I go to the next step. I can select if I want to have a personal training session. I'm going to select maybe. And if I select email, I go to the email address, final step where I can submit the form. Or if I select WhatsApp, I go to the WhatsApp number step and I can also submit the multi-step form. And by default, this is a normal Webflow form submission. So if I type in my WhatsApp phone number and click on submit form, you can see in the background, this is a normal Webflow form submission. So Inputflow has a lot more functionalities than I just showed you. As you can see, you have some action blocks right here. And also inside of a step, you also have additional functionalities like calculations and validations. I don't want to show you all of these other functionalities today. I would only like to show you one more functionality because it's really important and really cool in my opinion. And that is this validations functionality. If we take a look at the complete and final example, and click on sign up and then immediately try to go to the next step without filling out the first and the last name, you can see we cannot do that. There's this custom error element that shows up with a custom error message. So Inputflow or the multi-step form complains to the user, please enter your first name and please enter your last name. And this type of validation is really easy to set up with Inputflow, and I'm going to show you how you can do that. So let's set up the validation. I click on what's your name. I want to set up the validation for this step and create a validation. Then I have to select an input element that I want to validate. In this case, I'm going to validate the first name field. Input element first name is not valid if the first name is empty. That's what I'm going to choose right now, but as you can see, you again have lots of different options right here that you could choose from to validate or invalidate input field. But I'm going to choose a very simple function, the isEmpty function. And if the input element is not valid, I want to display an error message. Please enter your first name. I'm also going to do that for the last name field. So I add a validation. Input element, last name is not valid if the last name is empty. And I'm going to display the error message. Please enter your last name. And again, this is a very simple condition. I could also, like I did with the branching, with the conditional blocks here, the same holds true for the validation, that I can at any point in time chain conditions together with this and or the or button to build some more complex and custom validations. But in this case, I'm going to delete this again because we are going to keep it simple for this tutorial. Okay, now we've created the validation logic. But what we have not done yet, and what we absolutely have to do for this to work, is we have to set up or create the error elements where the error message will be displayed. I switch back to the Elements Manager up here, and then I go to the What's Your Name step where we set up the validation right here. And below the input field, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add a text block. And usually inside of this text block, I'm going to put a filler text, like something like error message will be displayed here, something like that. And I copy this text block and also put it below the second input element that I want to validate. And now these elements are not error elements yet, because Inputflow does not know that we want to show the error message inside of these elements. So what we have to do is we have to connect these error elements to Inputflow like we did at the very beginning of the tutorial with the steps and the next buttons. I click on this error element, and then it says turn selected element into, and I click on error message. Turned element into an error element. And I do that for this one as well. Turn element into an error. Turned element into an error element. And the cool part about this is this error element is just a normal Webflow element, just a normal Webflow text block, which means we can add a class to it and style it exactly how we want it to look. In this case, I already created a class so that we can save a little bit of time. So as you can see, I added a white background and centered the text. Let's also add this class to this one. The class name, again, is completely irrelevant. You can name your class names however you want. Inputflow does not care. And now that we've created these new elements and connected them with the Elements Manager, we have to publish the Webflow project to the .webflow.io domain again. Remember, every time you make changes or connect an element or remove a form element, you have to publish your Webflow project to the .webflow.io domain again. So I publish it to the selected domain. I reload this. So this is our form. I click on sign up. And if I try to go to the next step, you can see our error messages show up. And we cannot go to the next step unless these two fields are valid. In this case, they just don't have to be empty. So I'm going to type in my first name and try to go to the next step. And that doesn't work because there's still the second field. Please enter your last name. I enter my last name and go to the next step again. And only now the multi-step form lets me go to the next step, which is really cool, I think. And as you could see, in the Webflow Designer, we did not have to tell Inputflow that this error element is related to this input field. Inputflow will automatically look for the next error element of an invalid field inside of a step and will display the error message inside of that next error element. So that means if you put the error element below the input field, it is immediately the next one, and this is where the error message will be displayed. That is the general idea. Okay, and now one more very important information for you. As you can see right here, up there at the top right, it says upgrade. So the way the Inputflow pricing structure works, if we take a look at the pricing table here, the way the Inputflow pricing structure works is you can use Inputflow on your .webflow.io domain completely for free, unlimited, without paying anything. The idea with that is that you can try out and test out Inputflow on your staging domain as long as you want. You can see if it's a good fit for your client project, for your own project, or if it's not a good fit. And in case it is a good fit and you want to publish the multi-step form to a custom domain, then we ask you to upgrade to one of the paid plans. And these paid plans, they have unlimited forms and unlimited Webflow project. So if you have one plan, for example, this startup plan, you can use this for unlimited forms and unlimited Webflow projects across accounts, across workspaces. If you have any questions regarding Inputflow, or if you want to know something about it, or if you have some issues setting up your form, you can write a comment here on YouTube, or you can just contact me using the Inputflow support, you can just write mike@inputflow.io, and then I'll quickly get back to you. Also, if you are not sure whether Inputflow meets your project's requirements, you can also send me an email, and then I'll take a look at your project and I can give you a good estimation whether or not Inputflow is a good fit for you and your project. I recommend you to go to inputflow.io now and install the Inputflow app. Again, you can install it and test it out completely for free, and just work and play a little bit with it. And I think you're going to have a lot of fun. Thank you for tuning in. This was Mike, and see you next time. Bye.